Hello, everyone. Welcome to Arts and Change, hosted by the University of Rochester's Institute for the Performing Arts, in partnership with the Office of Engagement and Enrichment, the Paul J. Burgett Cultural Center, Create a New Space Now, and the Eastman Institute for Music Leadership and the ESL Rochester Fringe Festival. My name is Sarah Bickwheat-Penner, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am your conference host for this session with Ryley St.Rose-Finear. I am a white woman with shoulder-length, dark curly hair, hazel eyes, and a wide mouth. I'm sitting in front of a wood-framed window and a bookshelf over my right shoulder. We would like to acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, known as the Great Hill People, and the keepers of the western door of the Haudenosaunee. We take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers on whose ancestral lands the University of Rochester currently resides in Rochester, New York. As we come together, we also acknowledge the need for commitment to constant action and attention surrounding the systemic issues that continue to impact all of us. Captions and live transcription are enabled. To view either of these, please select the boxes at the bottom of your screen. We are recording today's session, so please note that your spoken and written comments and image may be included. In order to protect your privacy, we invite you to rename your Zoom profile with your first name only, and you are always welcome to turn off your video. Breakout rooms will not be recorded. Because we have back-to-back sessions today, this presentation will end promptly at its end time. And if you would like to connect with the presenter or other participants after the session, please email ur.ipa@rochester.edu. Thank you so much for joining us. And now I am honored to welcome Ryley St.Rose-Finear, who is presenting Tell a Different Story.
Good everybody, my name is Ryley. I have beautiful caramel skin and curly, dark brown roots and blonde tips. I'm wearing a blue and white striped shirt with a little shawl because I'm cold. And welcome to my presentation. Now, before I dive into it, a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Ryley St.Rose-Finear. I am a graduate of SUNY Purchase's acting program, a published author. On my weekends, I teach group fitness exercise, and I hold 2 certifications in screenwriting from the Sundance Institute's Collab program. Now, wait a minute. Conservatory of Acting, published author, screenwriting certifications. I see how these things are related, but group exercise, what does that have to do with storytelling? What does that have to do with anything? That just seems kind of random, right? When deciding to introduce myself, I chose this one to give a better holistic view of who I am as a person, a sort of point of comparison. What if I told you there are ways to tell stories in similar manners? A way to get a more 3-dimensional view of characters and themes by comparing them to something random, so you have a better understanding of it as a whole. Welcome to the world of Kisho Tenketsu. So, what is Kisho Tenketsu? Kisho Tenketsu was founded in China. This structure was founded during the Tang Dynasty and was a fundamental feature in Chinese poetry. The purpose of the structure was to observe the developmental sequential events not related to or affected by time. Instead, by relating it to the involvement of something which does not belong, or to say as eloquently as Lin Zongzhen, the non-temperamental or anachronic sequential structure. In essence, this means that as things unfold, we will be able to better understand it by understanding what it is not. This structure was thought to allow for more unique storytelling and spread from poems to literature, then to Korea, then to Japan, each adapting their own variation to tell their unique style to each country respectively. For the purpose of this informational session, I will be talking about how Japan uses this story structure specifically in movies. Kisho Tenketsu is a non-confrontational storytelling structure that breaks the story up into 4 parts: ki, Show, ten, and ketsu. Key, the introduction or setup or thrust into the world of the story. Show, giving a deeper understanding of the main characters and a deeper understanding of the rules of the world. 10, being the emotional twist, or also known as the shift in story perspective. And then ketsu, the resolution. Now, as I said before, Kisho Tenketsu is a non-confrontational story structure. So let's break it down even further. What does every story need in order to keep people engaged? Tension. A story about two friends sitting down, having lunch, talking about the sky isn't really that interesting. But what if one friend is desperately in love with the other friend and doesn't know how to say it? Or what if one friend is dying of terminal illness and they can't manage to talk about anything else but the beauty of the world? Stories capture our attention with tension. Western stories create tension through direct or indirect conflict. Two forces whose views and morals are so completely different that they butt heads the whole way. Eastern stories create tension through contrast and observation, observing the state of things being strikingly different, but not directly in conflict with one another. So what's the difference? Three-act structure says, hey, these things are different, and they're going to duke it out to see which one will win. Kisho Tenketsu says, hey, these two things are different, and isn't that kind of interesting and beautiful? So how can a story be non-confrontational? Isn't that boring? And yes, to many Western viewers, Kisho Tenketsu can be very boring. The movie isn't based around dramatic conflict. The main characters don't blow anything up to get their way. They don't fight some big battle for their end goal to reign supreme over any other forces. In many cases, in Kisho Tenketsu's stories, the world of our character that our character is living in doesn't really change that much. In Spirited Away, a Japanese film produced by Studio Ghibli, Chihiro is still moving to a new town and has to leave all of her friends and her for a new life, despite going through immense personal growth. In The Secret Life of Arrietty, despite the discovered love between Sean and Arrietty, humans and borrowers don't openly live together. In Kisho Tenketsu, change occurs by continued exposure to something different, not directly fighting it. I admit when I watched my first Studio Ghibli film, I was a little bored. I didn't understand it. As a conditioned Western audience member, I was waiting for conflict, for villain arcs, the big ending battle between good and bad that changes the world as we know it, because that's how I was trained to watch movies. That's what I expected. So now I'm going to tell you two stories that I made up, one using the traditional American structure, the three-act structure, and then one using Kisho Tenketsu. So once upon a time, there was a little girl who stopped at a vending machine. She put $1 in to get the drink, but nothing came out. The little girl, frustrated, recruits the help of a little boy who happened to be standing nearby. The little boy tells her that this has happened to him far too many times and that he will not let another child succumb to the cruel fate of the evil vending machine. They both kick and pound at the machine, using all their strength to find a way to get this drink out of this vending machine. After a laborious amount of effort, the vending machine finally gives way and spits out her cherry cola. She walks away pleased with herself, more confident than ever. And as for the little boy, he can finally sleep well, knowing that at least one child has been avenged. Cute story, right? Three-act structure, setup, conflict, resolution. Now, Kisho Tenketsu. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who stopped at a vending machine, coins jingling around in her hand as she looked at all her different options. She stands there for several minutes, wondering to herself, which flavor should she get? Across the way sits a little boy kicking his feet as his legs are too short to touch the ground. He looks around, admiring the day, wiping the sweat off his forehead, smiling. He seems to be waiting. All of a sudden, the little girl appears next to him and hands him one of the two drinks she is holding. They are friends. She sits down at the table and they chat about the heat. As the little girl watches her friend enjoy the drink she got him, she feels confident in her ability to make choices. And as for the little boy, he can sleep well knowing that he has people around him he can rely on. Same setting, same character, same moral conclusions, different structure. In the first story, the one using the three-act structure, conflict between the little girl and the vending machine drove the story. It's the setup. It's a hot day, and the little girl is thirsty and stops at the vending machine. Act 2, conflict, the forces for good, the little girl, and the forces for evil, the vending machine. The little girl's determination to get the drink and the stakes of her losing her money are the main storytelling devices to help this plot unfold. This is the act where the forces of good and evil are present and at arms with each other in three-act structure. In our case, the little girl won. Act 3, resolution. The world of our girl has completely changed. She is no longer concerned about the hot day, and post-vending machine battle, she's so much more confident. Three-act structure, setup, conflict, resolution. In the second story, the one using Kisho Tenketsu, the tension between the weather and the cold drinks are always present. What drives our story is the character's ability to grow and adapt based on these given laws. Act 1, key, setup. It's a hot day. Little girl finds a vending machine. Act 2, show, the deeper understanding of our characters in the world. The girl can't decide which drink to get, and at first glance, she can look indecisive, possibly greedy because she has enough money to buy more drinks than she needs, things like that. Act 3, 10, the shift in perspective. This random little boy sitting down at the table, wiping the sweat off his hat. This has seemingly nothing to do with anything. And in contrast to the girl, he is not actively trying to cool himself off. We see a more lighthearted side of the hot day, how beautiful it can be and how happy sitting in the sun can make some people. And now we have a different perspective on the same day. Act 4, Ketsu, the resolution. The little girl hands him one of her drinks, and we see that the two are friends. They learn their moral lessons, and all is well. There is no good, no evil, no right or wrong, no big battle. So now that we've seen Kisho Tenketsu and three-act structure in stories that I made up, let's break down Kisho Tenketsu in a story I didn't make up called The Secret World of Arrietty, another Japanese film by Studio Ghibli. And it's a great way to look at the differences between Eastern and Western stories. In this story, conflict is present, but not the main motivator. From a Western point of view, this can look like a story of conflict, one small world being faced with insurmountable odds as the giant human world hunts them down one by one. But let's take a look at it through our new lens. Key. We start with Sean, a human arriving at his new house. He wanders into the garden and spots Arrietty, a tiny borrower who is so small that a sugar cube takes up most of the room in her backpack. We are immediately thrown into the world and the tiny wonders of Arrietty's life. She needs to traverse the world in a special and unique way to compensate for her smaller size, and the magical way her and her family live inside the walls of the house that Sean is staying at. Show. We get a deeper understanding of our main character's life. After a failed borrowing attempt, Arrietty and Sean go back to their daily lives. We get a deeper understanding of how each lives. Arrietty's life is full of adventure. She's brave, helping her mom and dad with whatever needs to be done. Arrietty continues to be curious and brave-hearted, testing her limits to get a closer look at the human world, and even standing up to her parents when she feels things can be different. On the contrary, Sean is left alone by his parents and taken care of by his aunt. His mother and father are too busy to take care of their son. And it isn't explained why yet, but it's very important for Sean to take it slow. So he spends his days laying down in bed and being cared for and silently hoping that something will happen. Instead of conflict being the main point of the story, contrast acts as a gateway into a deeper understanding of the differences between Sean and Arrietty's lives to further the explanation of why these two worlds have and will always be separate. Show doesn't set up for a big battle. It merely offers more explanation of what's happening as the story continues to unfold. 10, the turning point. Now, remember, this is the act that takes the story sort of sideways. Our main goal of the character is kind of set aside to focus on something else. In The Secret World of Arrietty, we get a deeper look at Sean's heart condition for the first time, learning that he's had a heart problem since he was little, and that for all intents and purposes, he thinks he's going to die soon. This new information has seemingly nothing to do with the story, and nor will it be resolved. But this change in perspective is integral to our understanding of his characters and deepens our empathy and emotional understanding of why he is so protected and interested in these tiny borrowers that live in his walls. This act sort of is a role reversal, a way to get to see the other side of the story that 3-act structure just doesn't allow for. Suddenly, all our focus is on Sean and how he sees the world. He is harsh and to the point, very matter-of-fact about death and being alone. The story's two characters that live completely separate lives coming together to see eye to eye for the first time. This act is the reason Japanese Kisho Tenketsu stories don't have villains. They don't have heroes. They don't have good or bad forces. 10 allows the story to show different perspectives without placing positive or negative undertones in worlds that seem, at first glance, different. We also see the love that the characters have for each other in this act, another plot point that has nothing to do with anything, and it will never get resolved, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Act 4, Ketsu. This is where we tie up the whole story. After getting our fresh perspective and themes, and the acts and the different themes are all tied together as our character takes the final step in their journey. Arrietty and her family leave Sean's backyard to find a new home. Sean runs after Arrietty for the last chance to say goodbye. And in his final conversation with Arrietty, he tells her that she has strengthened his heart by being in it. Because of her, he now knows bravery and has something to live for. The love between Sean and Arrietty is consistent and dynamic. The rules of the world dictate that their lives can't be lived together, and the love they share will, in years to come, be reduced to a memory. This fact, this rule of the world, isn't something that's going to be a starting point for a terribly exhausting adventure on love, but it acts as a pinpoint to understand and allow love to exist in places it might not be encouraged. The stories we tell affect the way we see the world. In addition to that, the emotions we attach to these stories determine our mentality towards certain things. For example, I wake up every morning and I tell myself, bluebirds are the most beautiful bird to ever have existed. And every time I see a bluebird, I get this feeling of the first time I saw a bluebird and how the wind was blowing in my face and the sun was setting as it just soared across the sky. And I continually reinforce this love for bluebirds every time I see them. Over time, I've created in my mind a positive association to bluebirds. On the contrary, if I tell myself dogs are smelly and I don't like them, they bite and they're scary, then over time I will have a negative reaction to dogs. This can be true for anything, no matter the issue, big or small. The increase in the repetition of these stories cement our emotional biased perceptions of the world. Once we've cemented these associations, our understandings and feelings related to these biases become subconscious. After the millionth bluebird I've seen, I can't tell you why I like them, I just do. Or after the 100th dog, I can't tell you why I look away. I've forgotten that it was because my best friend got bit or whatever the case was. This is how the human brain functions. It's our safety net. So how do we change this perspective? How do we even recognize bias? How can we unlearn that dogs are scary so we can pet the really fluffy one that lives down the street, or acknowledge that bluebirds can be really mean creatures? We begin by telling ourselves a different story. So, why do I say all this? What is the point? I'm bringing this up to say that the stories we tell ourselves hold a deeper meaning for our subconscious understanding of the world. If we tell ourselves, in order to get the thing I want, I have to defeat my competitors, or once I overcome all these obstacles, I can finally be happy, or anything that puts our entire individual lives at odds with one another, as told to us in the three-act structure. Once we stop doing this, we are able to realize that we don't necessarily need to fight our surroundings. We see on TV and movies confrontation after confrontation till we begin to start to look for villains in our own lives. We continually look for someone or anything to be in conflict with because that makes for a great story, right? That's what we've turned our bias to. That's not to say that conflict doesn't exist, it does. But what if we didn't have to make it the center of our lives, the center of our stories? If we take notes from Kisho Tenketsu, we'll begin to realize that fighting doesn't have to be the center. It doesn't necessarily have to exist at all once we allow for contrast to serve its deeper purpose in understanding. And when we realize that we are able to rely on one another, the real battle isn't each other. The real battle is the rules and the laws that keep us from feeling connected. The struggle of daily life influences us as humans, and societal culture over time affects our humanity. So I believe it's more important now than ever to tell ourselves a different story. And if you were paying attention, you would have noticed that I structured this speech using Kisho Tenketsu. I gave a setup, I gave a deeper understanding of the two different structures, I changed the perspective to talk about bias, and then I tied it all together. Now, I'm not here to tell you that one structure is better than the other, and I'm not here to force you to use one structure over the other. I just simply want people to know that this structure existed, that this structure exists. And once this talk is over, just like in Kisho Tenketsu's stories, my world won't really be changed. I won't immediately see Hollywood bump out thousands of stories using Eastern story structure. But if I use this story structure correctly, I would have been able to give my audience a different perspective and a fresh understanding on stories in the way we see the world. And hopefully let you guys know that change and understanding is possible. Only first, we might need to tell a different story. So that's my talk, and it goes to 1:45. So if there's any questions, or we can like open for like discussion to talk about anything that resonated. I also have a couple questions to leave with you guys to think about when you're thinking about structure or different ways to talk about stories and stuff. Yeah, it's just kind of like free little discussion time.
Thank you, Ryley, so much. This was super profound in a lot of ways. I feel like it should be like, and especially the way you shifted to talk about bias and then you even kind of revealed that you meant to do that and this was part of your structure. I mean, it was just fantastic. I feel like it's like the idea of like the stories we tell ourselves like create us in many ways, like is really huge. So just thank you. That's all. I don't really have a question, but except for
Yeah, the,
where else can you share this, you know?
it actually fun fact is that Greek philosophers like back like Sophocles era, they used to take storytelling as they used to like archive it for like history purposes. And like the Aristotle who made three-act structure was a philosopher and not a storyteller. And I just think that's so interesting that a person who's dedicated to like studying the way humans live created a structure, and like that's how people tell their stories. And then I just think that's just really interesting in my brain. How do you let me there's a question in the chat. Hold up.
Do you want me to read it for you? Oh, you got it.
Oh,
Here, I can read it. It says, so awesome, Kaylee says. How do you integrate this structure into your acting, writing, and other work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, acting, writing, and other work. For my acting work, I think it's really important because Kisho Tenketsu allows like villains to not necessarily be villains. Like the villains in Kisho Tenketsu's stories are villains because they oppose the main character. And in 10, we realize that it's actually not coming from them, it's coming from the world that they live in, and they have to navigate the world in a way that just inherently opposes this character that we've been following for 2 acts. And that's why there's not really villains, because you can see that you can understand and you can empathize with them. And I think for acting, that's super important because acting is all about empathy, and it's all about how do I put myself into the world of somebody else. And if like I'm playing like a villain in the traditional 3 act structure, you can get to this point of like, these people are horrible, da 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 da. But some of my old acting teachers used to say that there's a line that everybody would cross. Like when you kill a fly, how is that feeling similar to like being in a world where you feel so like you have to kill a person or a dog, or like how is that different? And I think in Kisho Tenketsu it gives us that flip of the script of like, well, where can I empathize with these people that this person feels they have to do this thing because that's the way that the world has sort of pushed them into behaving. um was it I was acting, writing, and other work. So writing, yeah, I'm working on some of my own writing work, and I'm structuring it this way, and it's just been really nice to like kind of be like, okay, like systems and different like societal things, like how does that push us to the point where we just feel like we can't connect, like because of our skin color or because of our gender or because of our sexuality, like that has societally pushed us into these separate categories. And there's like a couple minutes left, so I want to share these questions, and someone can write them in the chat if they want to, but I had a couple questions to just leave you guys with to just think about after the talk.
I'll put them in.
So, what is a different way I can look at this in order to deepen my understanding? How many different sides of me make up who I am? How can I be motivated to achieve my goals in a way that doesn't rely on conflict? Is there anything present in someone with whom I don't agree that I can empathize with? And then the last question, where is love consistent? One more minute left. Let me see if there's anything else in the comments. But talk was a great expression of me. You're welcome.
Anne
Yeah.
says, I'm about to do a class that includes Aristotle's Poetics, so your talk was great to explore the nature of different narratives. Thank you.
You're welcome, Anne.
And
That class
then
sounds so interesting. Aristotle's Poetics. Yeah.
Trish says, do you think that in abiding by the Japanese structure in your work that people less familiar with the structure might not receive it as well, um,
100%.
or understand? How do you contend with this possibility?
Um, First question, I 100% agree because, as I said in my talk, people that are Western, people that are brought up with Western story structure, they are very used to seeing conflict and battles and winners and losers. And so when you get a story that doesn't have that, it can be perceived as boring. Um, as an artist, as like an independent storyteller, I personally, it's like not my business how people receive my work. I say how I feel and I trust that it'll bring good to this world. And if people don't get it, that's okay. That's, that's on them, but it's just a different offer of something a little less harsh, a little less violent. But I feel like our world needs a little perspective change, especially when it comes to things being different than us. Yeah. Is there any other questions? I'm in the chat. Oh, those are the questions that I have.
The last question I had was from Megan. I'm really interested in how this approach to storytelling can be shared when prompting others to share their stories, especially on a micro scale. I would love to follow up with you about this.
Oh, please do, please do. A fun fact I found in my research is that people in Japan, they actually are like embedded with the story structure the way that we are like embedded with the React structure, to the point that they like will teach Kisho Tenketsu as like a way to structure their sentences, which I think is like insanely amazing. So yeah, please follow up. I did a lot of research on this and I have like a 16-page like kind of like essay on this. So if you need to like follow up or you have more questions or you think about this later, like please feel free to contact whatever the email Sarah said, and then it'll get back to me and I'm so free to answer the questions that you guys have.